All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the special joint city council and planning commission meeting, part two, on May 19th, 2026. We'll call the meeting to order at 5:32. With that, we will have the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand. Pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States. Republic, which stands the nation, God, indivisible, liberty. City Clerk, can we please have roll call?
Sure. Mayor Hudson,
Present.
Vice Mayor Thomas,
Here.
Councilmember Hanson,
Here.
Councilmember Pride, here. Councilmember Busby, absent. Chair Quorum is absent. Vice Chair McNeil is absent. Commissioner Nygaard, here. Commissioner Brott, here. Commissioner Powell, here. Thank you.
Okay, with that, we will go on to item 4, workshop public comment. Individuals wishing to speak on the Title 18 workshop are asked to complete a speaker card and submit it to the city clerk. Comments should be directed to council and planning commission and are limited to 3 minutes. By law, the council and or planning commission cannot discuss or take actions on items not listed on the posted agenda. Is there any public comment?
Would it be possible, Mayor, during the course, since this is kind of long and we're going through a large document, if the public does have comments throughout, can they just ask for input?
Honestly, ask the city attorney that question.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, she's not present yet, so.
Yeah, I just thought, sometimes something will come up if they haven't had a chance to read the whole document to have comments ahead of time. I doubt that most of the public would, but if we're in the middle of a
The city attorney is being promoted to panelist right now, so you can ask her.
So Gretchen, did you hear the question? Can you hear me now?
Yes. As this is a workshop, it's a little unorthodox, but could be done that way. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Saying it's unorthodox, but it could be done. It's, I think, your discretion.
Okay. With that, I mean, I don't have a problem with it. You see a problem with that?
Nope.
Okay. That'd be fine. We will continue on to item 5, Municipal Code Title 18 Zoning Workshop. Recommended action, present, discuss, and seek feedback and consider any proposed modifications to the draft Title 18 zoning of the Willows Municipal Code, the City Council, Planning Commission, city staff, and the public. Contact Joe Betancourt, Community Development and Services Director. Joe, do you have anything to add before we jump back into where we were at?
Nope, just as you stated, this is a follow-up meeting from the April 30th meeting to finish kind of the second half of the Title 18 zoning. And I believe we left off starting with chapter 18.110.
Yes, I have page 54. Sound right? 53.
Yeah, well, I think
Somehow I thought we were on 140. I don't know where I
that
was.
would be done.
Well, this is page 53 of 117. So if we were on 140, that would be,
Wishful
why are
thinking.
we here?
Sure, I'm not sure where I came up with that number, but anyways, okay.
Okay, perfect. And we want to just go through kind of as we did before, and we can discuss items that people have questions on strike throughs or where there's not changes, and kind of free to make those comments and then move to the next. Does that sound good?
I think that sounds.
Absolutely. What we can do, because this is all going to be documented, it's being recorded, we can transcribe it and look at it later. As we move through, is just try to focus on key points and getting concurrence on those points being something that we want to do or, discuss and move forward. So I think I'm just trying to limit outside. I mean, it just takes a bit. So we'll try to move as quick as we can. With that being said, is there any comments for 18.1101?
Hey, Joe, I just wanted to know, and they'd pick it up, but in the table of contents for the 18.110, they didn't add the 18.110.115 for the mobile food business operations. They added that section, but it just didn't get referenced in.
Perfect.
Really should share.
You have what?
Any other? Do we just want to kind of go like 18.1101 or does that work out? And go any comments or do we want to go through each of the pages?
Why don't we go by page?
Okay. So 53, we've got adding the 18.110115. Anything on page 54? Anything on page 55?
So on page 55, they added temporary events to temporary use and events. And so under temporary events, and I'm going to apologize for a minute because I was trying to read through in the new formatting today, as well as looking back at this one. So temporary events involve the use of land for a limited duration and are permitted in any zoning district upon the issuance of an administrative use permit. So under administrative use permits, I don't think it said anything about temporary events needing an admin permit.
Any other comments on 55?
Well, under temporary uses, they have circuses, carnivals, which seem like those are events. I mean, is it a use or is it an event? Well, the uses don't have any time restriction, but the events.
So I think we can move that circuses, carnivals, and amusement parks down to the temporary events and specifically called out.
Yeah,
There.
and just maybe that whole section staff could just look at it so we don't take a lot of time, but temporary events have time limits on them. If you look down and read, somewhere I know I read that today. Kind of says
Exceed seven.
seven
seven
consecutive days or
days.
4 successive weekends per year.
Yeah.
But a temporary use has no time restriction.
that's-
So what's temporary?
Yeah, and that's what we do. We did run recently just for a construction modular to be on site. So
Right.
different things. So I think putting that in the events portion
Right.
under those regulations.
Especially when a
Good.
temporary use is permitted in any zoning districts on the use of an admin permit. But then the events didn't. Anyway,
Yep.
like I said, I read it once. It's confusing. We could read that again.
Yep. Any other comments on 55?
55, I know there's the admin burn letter that you can get for non-conforming uses. That's something that we've done in the past. Someone buys a home, it's non-conforming in a district, they can get a letter that allows them to rebuild it if they have a mortgage. And that doesn't really say that here.
Okay.
So just some reference to what we allow as what we've kind of called it's a zoning clearance letter, I think is what we call it now. It was kind of referred to as a burn letter.
All right. Any other comments on 55? 56?
I think it references, if you go mid-page under where it's under number 8, I think it kind of refers to the zoning clearance letter, the administrative letter. But I kind of made a note, is there a conflict or it was a little bit confusing? So that paragraph would kind of go with the prior one that I noted. And then in number 10, we're still referring to the entryway zoning district. And single family, the
Okay, yeah.
use. So we'll want to clean that up if we're going to still have an overlay or something.
Okay, anything else on 56? All right, 57.
So under number 8 on page 57, no yard may be used or allowed to be used for storage, accumulation, or placement of junk automobiles or other motor vehicles except. And under A, automobiles regularly in use which are parked within the off-street parking space provided for on said property. Is that defined? Because currently, like, there's a couple houses in town that don't have a driveway, but they're parking 2 cars in their front yard. So, you know, what's that an encroachment permit for a driveway? Is that a concrete? Because that is an issue that we're having. So I think as we kind of say we have issues, how are we describing what would be considered
Yeah, so
a problem?
we've got code enforcement language that deals with the lawn part of it, but I think strengthening this, saying maybe if in compliance with the code enforcement section or something. Okay.
Yeah, just correlation to or consistent.
Reference to it.
Yeah, because it says off-street base on
Park space.
Well, they've changed it to gravel and they've put ramp sidewalks, curbs and gutters. How can it's gravel? I'm just saying it's people
Well,
are doing it.
The off-street parking space outlined permitted.
I'm just saying it just for the code purposes, just that clarity between what's already in code and.
This might be a dumb question, but when we read this, are we only referring to the front yards or does it also pertain to backyards too? And do we monitor what people keep in their backyard?
We can code enforce what's visible from the public right of way, right? So if we're going down an alley, so if a trailer's visible and we get a report that someone's living in it, have recently, we can go investigate that and talk to them. What we don't, or we get a report, it does make it more difficult, but if we can see it over the fence from the public right of way, then yes, we can. We have the ability to.
But as far as just keeping lots and lots and lots of junk in your backyard,
It is not. If we got a code enforcement plan, we can see it.
A lot of people think it is.
I might be referring to a neighbor.
We get into the health and safety of rodents or, things like that. So we can, the accumulation of just like cars, it makes it a little tough, but yeah, we have a visual. It's visible from the public right of way. We can fit it under nuisance category. Yeah,
Or if a neighbor
we have before.
if a neighbor filed a complaint, it
Yep.
wouldn't necessarily be someone seeing it from the alley. The neighbor could be concerned.
And if our code,
Driven stuff is definitely.
yeah. And so our code enforcement guy would go there and peek and we'd hit with what violations.
It's still better doing the same stuff.
Yeah.
Later.
That's kind of the one I was.
Does it need to
Yes, I
be-
do.
Sometimes our language, so it says no yard may be used for the storage and it just like for anything. Like it doesn't say excess storage or it doesn't say storage, it's a problem. So, I mean, sometimes our language, and I'll go back to our weed abatement where our code says, you have to have 30 feet cleared around all your buildings. That's what our code requires. Well, we don't do that, but that's a crazy requirement. No one's going to have 30 feet around all their yard. So when we say no yard may be used for storage, accumulation, or placement of junk automobiles or other things, does that mean you can't have one engine block because you've stored it? So that's a no.
And what we can possibly do here is maybe look at this whole section and because we're kind of double referencing the code enforcement section. Right. And so just review the code enforcement part with this and make sure we're not contradicting because the code enforcement language is, I think, pretty strong at this point. And what we don't want to do is create any ambiguity in this language. So maybe just a whole review of that.
And I think just reasonable, if someone complains and they say, well, your code says they can't store anything.
Yes.
And then you say, well, it's only this much.
Yeah.
Well, now who's deciding that?
Yep. And yeah, and the code enforcement piece speaks more specifically to things that would be a visual nuisance or public health or.
What's the definition of junk?
I circled
Yeah.
it.
One person's junk is another man's treasure.
Exactly.
All
It's
right.
junk.
Anything else on 57?
So under storage containers, the containers cannot be located on property prior to placement of the principal residence. But now if they're doing construction, like they're building a house or something like that, that be allowed with an administrative permit?
So
Because it just says they cannot. It seems like somewhere there's provision if you're building for construction trailers and different things, and sometimes, storing things for safekeeping on a construction site.
I can't remember. We recently went through this with a person that wanted to place storage container on the property prior to the placement. And we did deny them the ability to do that because we didn't want that storage container to without any moving forward with the actual project. If somebody came in for a temporary use permit, I know what you're saying on this, that this would explicitly not allow them to do that. If they did a temporary use permit with a modular on it while they're building, then I could see that as being something that allow.
So it says that if
You
it
could also
offers a
get-
building permit, must meet the thing. Saying that in one sense, it's saying that it not.
Have to
So
have
are
a
you
house
talking
there.
about when it's just being used for construction? Does this make it sound like the design criteria? So it makes it sound like it.
So it would. Yeah, I don't know the building permit side of that. That might. Speaking to something different, but I don't know what we would have we just need to make sure the foundation was set correctly, potentially, for the placement of a storage container, but we're going through, this would be all of the things that they would need to do in order to place a storage container on these districts. So yeah, we would need a building.
Lori, I think to answer your question on 58, section 6 talks about temporary use of a storage container. And it does say that they can get a temporary use permit. Now I have to go back and check what section 130 means. Yes, but I would assume that
No,
would probably
you're right.
qualify it.
Sometimes my answer as I'm reading. So under 6, you could do a temp. But not until. The other ones, unless you don't, if you don't have a house like that, so you thought of it, can't put the cargo container in.
Yeah. But you're reading section 1 where that's its own section and then it has its own subsections to qualify under 18-110-110. But
No,
you could
I-
go under section 6 though.
I think
You only have to
section 1 is
qualify it.
permanent.
Huh?
Permanent
It's for
placement. and
Permanent
then-
placement.
But we do have a.
We do have a
way
temporary.
to have
use.
them have one.
That
Um,
makes sense. Okay.
my only concern, and I didn't really notice it getting caught in here, is the transformation of storage containers into living space.
Mhm.
That's actually a pretty common thing for them to turn into.
Yes.
I would start seeing storage popping up as ADUs. So is there a way for us to specify?
Potentially, I'd have to. No, I think it's before barn dominiums and the storage container homes were a thing. I don't believe so off the top of my head that we've got. Normally that would follow a building permit process as a typical house, right?
Mhm.
So they make them pre-engineered. So it'd be something where we would go through plan check process with it and it would be handled as just a regular home. Not saying we can't put provisions in there that limit those. I don't know the legality of that though.
Sprinklers, solar, EV chargers.
I mean, you would have to meet California code with all of your regulations. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. We can look into that as long as what we would check on is that it doesn't interfere with the housing laws and prohibiting that. But there might be something to do. So I'll make a note to look into those and see what authority we do have.
That's twice she's done that to us.
But yeah, we'll look into that.
Squinting.
And then just quickly on 57 F at the bottom, containers cannot be placed in any city designated entryway locations. So those are going to be what? Tehama, Wood Street, or
Yeah. It would be, yeah, exactly. Wood
I mean, I just
Street.
didn't know like how far on those whole arterial corridors, what's considered an entryway.
Does it reference the entryway district? Sorry, or does it just
It just
say?
says entryway locations.
Okay.
So that's just a question.
Yeah, I mean, I would take it that that's a definition that I don't know if it's defined, but it's not specifically entryway district, so. Out if it's. My initial thought would be Wood Street. Anyway, but okay, anything else on 57?
So storage containers for R1 need an admin purpose. So switching over to the page 58, but for commercial and industrial zones, they need a conditional use permit. Is there a reason for the difference? Is it because that R1 stuff's existing single family doesn't typically go to the planning commission for anything and commercial stuff does more often, or?
Stating that if it's in those, it goes with a use permit.
Yeah,
instead of a-
commercial and industrial zones are a use permit, but residential are an admin.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't have a reason.
Note it. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's fine. Yeah. I don't need an answer tonight, just questions.
Mm-hmm. Anything else on 58? Uh, 59. Storage.
So this had a lot of stuff on amortization, if somebody went into debt, I must cargo container, we moved it into. How do we even track that? My note was just, when was our code first adopted for storage container? Because anything that was not lawfully exist prior to the adoption had to be brought into. Now we're redoing the whole thing. So how do we want to treat her?
I do know that there are people who them out time and then up at the end. That's the only time I could see that. Active pick up.
Talking about non.
That's what I mean. It wasn't forming. Get it out of there.
If it's relevant, I just thought it was.
It's a weird. It's like that happened like every 2 million. So they made
So
a
it'd be
code for it.
I just have to ask, this might be a stupid question, but this whole chapter 18.115 adult entertainment business regulations, all this pertains to adult entertainment?
No,
business?
it's that is a mistake. So we got
Thank
it.
goodness.
Yeah,
I got worried.
it's stuck throughout the doc.
There's a lot of pages of that on there. When I first saw that.
Of course, it had to be that chapter that
Yeah.
stuck throughout the entire document. No, it is not. It is supposed to be the 18.
Okay.
Get that.
I think it takes over about 30 pages.
Yeah,
I was like, wow, this is a really big code section.
Yeah.
Phillips.
Someone put a lot of thought in.
right.
I never realized.
That's working with red line edits right there, and somehow
Yeah.
it's stuck throughout. Okay, move on to 60.
It's pretty much all this emergency shelter development state code required stuff. That's what I just, I kind of thought it's probably all state required, so it doesn't matter what.
No, I don't. We can look into it. It might be a required. Oh,
I just know it was one of the pieces in the RFP that they were to look at for state clients was the emergency shelter, so I'm assuming still.
make a
required.
note to double check though. Not we.
And then just throughout some of those references to the municipal code is all changing with the new format, and they're going to go through the final references and all the stuff.
Yes.
They're going to do it within. They're going to do it within the Title 18, making sure consistency Harris's, but Prentice Long will be comparing this to the rest of the code. if
Right.
they're
I meant references within 18.
Okay.
They've got a whole new format. So the code references are referring to are incorrect here because of changes they've made here, but now they've taken all of this and put it into this whole new format. So it's all different anyway.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah, I
So
wasn't
that's
sure if
within
you meant the
18.
whole global document or. Okay.
You'll be going back and marrying everything up with the new changes. Okay, 61.
That, six,
Yes.
second. Out by section C,
Mhm.
second. So,
So
I would think,
what happened is we did get a notice from the state that our ADU portions of our chapter were out of compliance. So this has been updated to be conforming with the new state requirements. I'm going to reference off of memory, which is always tough for me, but I think they do have to allow more than one. And one example that Amy gave was the converting the existing part of a home into an ADU, a junior ADU, and then another ADU. But what I can do is definitely have them. I know this has been a concern. I can for it from the last meeting. So is look at this and see, is all of this required? I have a feeling it may be, and if not, we can kind of work it over on setting no more than 3, no more than, whatever we can minimize that to.
I plays it.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thanks.
Stupidity.
Scott Wiener.
Yeah.
Got something else out today that
Yeah. So, I mean, it was good timing that we were notified that, hey, we need to update it, but it's a pretty, here's what you will do kind of document, but we'll check. Yep.
So item D just below there. So now it's talking about the design of the second dwelling unit or the third if we have a junior, but the second dwelling unit detached has to be compatible with the design of the primary dwelling unit and the surrounding neighborhood. So is there a design review requirement for ADUs then to make sure that they're not a cargo container that's being, put in for an ADU?
The design review does not cover R1 currently, unless it's been changed later in the chapter under the architectural board of review. So currently, as the previous code is written, no, we would not have a mechanism.
So I just wonder if we should have that in there.
Yeah.
If we can't do it for R1, but if we could do it can we do it for any of the R zones? Have architectural review board review. If you had a duplex and someone wanted to add something else to it. They
Yeah, and
typically
we would
do
just
it.
get into, so for subdivisions and things like that, I think when it's more than 4 units, it does hit design review and goes through a process. When it's individual houses and maybe duplexes again, it's not.
So we desire that the design, but we don't really have any teeth. We can tell them what.
Yeah, and I'll check on that. And where I worry that we might have an issue is that if we're treating because they always want these second dwellings treated as the same, the same as a primary residence. So if we didn't do it for a single family, then we may not be able to do it for that second dwelling, but I'll look into that. And then if we don't have anything, the ability to regulate how that dwelling looks, yeah. Eyeballs.
Can I write the date? Are we on page 61
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
and 18-110? Oh, Keith. I'm good. Good. And you just E.
Yeah.
Okay. I was going to say something about F
No, go ahead.
in between. It talks about the total floor space for a detached second dwelling shall not exceed 1,200 square feet. Have more than one bedroom. When I bought my home, it was 1,148 square feet and had 3 bedrooms and 2 baths. So this says 1 bedroom. I'm just curious why it's 1 bedroom and maybe not 2.
For second.
Yes.
I think the fact that it does not exceed. That's the max.
Right.
Yes,
Could
that's
be,
the max.
right?
And
But-
I'm saying my home was smaller than that and I had 3
Three bed-
bedrooms and 2 baths.
So it's the bedroom condition of why is that 1 bedroom instead of?
Yeah, why is it 1 bedroom and not 2?
Mm-hmm.
You consider, is it,
Well, that's what, I mean, are there
Bring
any
in the
state
family.
requirements on an ADU in terms of how big? Because it used to be that ADUs couldn't be more than a certain percentage of the front house,
Yes.
and there's
Yeah,
been all those
30%
changes
spread
now
out.
with them. So it does the state stipulate if it can only be 1 bedroom?
And I'll have to look at the exact law and then I can let you, because this may be all just pulled straight from their language, but if it's not, then we may have an ability to modify. Just like I said,
does it
brand.
have anything to do with how people can be in the ADU?
Well, if they limit it to 1 bedroom, it would, so that could potentially be it, but I've got to go look at the state law and see where they pulled it from.
But if you can have 1,200 square feet, you can still have them sleeping on bunk
Well,
beds in the
yeah.
living room.
I've seen a number of plans for ADUs and some of them 2 bedrooms. The second one is much smaller,
Yeah.
but it gives the assistance that if you want to have guests, you could.
Yeah. And this may be something specific to our code that they just left in.
Yeah,
Not
it could
know
be,
it.
because I know that there are, like in Marysville, we have pre-approved
Mhm.
plans. Well, not Marysville, but Yuba County has pre-approved plans that you could pick from that are already ready to go. And there are some actually 2 bedrooms
Yeah.
in the plan. So that's a good point.
This was
We'll
our
check it
current code that just wasn't changed, so it's probably something we had
Yeah.
there from before.
I would agree. And I agree with Marty on that. Orland's got pre-made plans that are, I know, 1 bedroom. So, but we'll confirm, check that out.
Well, I want them to stay at 1 bedroom. Like, I don't see why we want a bunch of ADUs and JADUs in here that are 3-4 bedroom houses. We have a primary house on the location already in a residential area. Why do I want somebody to convert their garage into a 3 bedroom house for a whole nother family, overcrowding my neighborhood? Leave it at 1 bedroom. Why are we wanting to do 2 bedroom?
Question is going to be, does the state allow us to restrict or not? Because the state's making us do it.
I would think that they looked at
But I
that.
thought they already went through this and adjusted it to match the state.
Oh, that's what I thought.
Is that not what
So we-
was stated
I'm
right here?
assuming they did, and there might not be a
Maybe that's what
restriction
this-
Yeah,
on doing it.
okay.
But we'll get the state code and then we'll get an email out to you guys on this because it's obviously very important to everybody on what is actually required. And then, we can follow up on modifying that, how we want it to look.
Yeah, I agree with that. I can
Well,
encourage that.
I want to put in a backyard bedroom. Fit in more. I don't want.
Yeah.
well, and the other question, Joe, would be on the whole bottom of that page. It's like things were added, or were those things those things were just all taken out? So there was a lot of things taken out about off-street parking and covered park, so can we not, again, what's the state make us do? Because I'm assuming if they took out all this other stuff, that
Yeah,
it's because. we
absolutely.
have-
And in my head, I'm thinking it's because it had to be.
Mhm.
But I'll do the run through that whole thing.
Well, and the other one, and I took it out. I know you're going to check it, but the other one, it used to be that the primary owner, the owner of the property had to live in the front house, and now they've taken that out. So you could have 3 units and they could all be rented. So
That's
no-
all state requirements.
Gretchen,
that you?
Yes, those are all state requirements.
So what we currently are seeing here that's left there, going back to F, which was Keith. So it is a state requirement that the total floor space cannot exceed 1,200 square feet and may not have more than one bedroom.
I don't know about the bedroom, but I know the 1,200 square foot is a state requirement, as well as the changes in the off-street parking. All of that is state requirements.
Thank you.
We can just confirm all of that with everybody. Like we got
Are we good on 61? Go to 62.
So I know there was just a note on the side that said this whole section should be reviewed against the housing element. So has it been, do we know? There's no changes.
Yeah, I'll double check. I think that comment just got left in and it probably was
Okay.
for conformance, but I'll verify that. We'll verify
And-
it.
And then the last part on the ADUs under environmental determination, that's near the top of page 62. The council finds that the adoption and implementation of the ordinance is exempt from the provisions of CEQA, and that the council finds that there is no possibility that the implementation of this section may have significant effects on the environment. As a council member, I don't know that I'm comfortable saying that when we can have 3 families living on one 6,000 square foot parcel in the city of Willows with, no
what
say so.
council is saying that?
Again, the state carved out exceptions to CEQA specifically for ADUs.
And that's
Well, they
fine,
can
but
say
don't say
that.
that we did. We said it was.
Yeah,
Maybe we could say.
Yeah, strike that last
state
sentence.
finds there's no
the state finds that there's no possibility.
Or legislature.
And that language is something that was left in the ordinance it was referencing is,
From
11,
the older,
2017. So we may be able to modify that
I wouldn't mind having that last sentence.
and we may want to.
Yeah, I think we probably need to take a look at that, because I know that the ADU stuff has been specifically by the state exempted from CEQA.
And just to say that would be wonderful.
Yeah, and I think we might be, yeah. So I'm going to put remove and we'll double check.
Section 18-110.113. Section 2, subsection D. City of Willows has historically provided reasonable accommodation through the use of existing regulatory procedures not specifically designed for people with disabilities. What does that even
Give me that one more time.
mean?
Word salad.
Section 2, subsection D as in David. The City of Willows has historically provided the reasonable accommodation through the use of existing regulatory procedures not specifically designed for people with disabilities. Can we get, yeah,
Gretchen.
Yeah.
That one has me stumped. I'd have to reread that one.
To me, it sounds, yeah, we need to check this whole fair housing. Good. Reasonable accommodation, it's publicly noticed that we'll provide that through the use of existing procedures, not specifically designed for people with disabilities. To me, maybe meaning that we can make a reasonable accommodation, but our regular process is not specifically designed for people with disabilities, as we don't have fully ADA compliant buildings working on. But it is, we'll check that out.
I'm good with 62, but
No, page
That
62. No, it is
Yeah.
confusing.
that one threw me off.
Anything else on 62? All right, 63. Again, this is all relating back to the Fair Housing Act.
And maybe we could just
Make sure.
reconfirm with Harris that this is all language that needs discretion.
I think that'd be important to know what we actually can change versus trying to change the shape of a brick wall.
All right, so that moves us into 64, density bonus.
I would have the same comments on density bonus. Is it required by state law? And if it is all the language what we're supposed to say?
Okay.
Gretchen, do you know if density bonus is required under state law?
Yes, I do believe it is.
Yeah, I think so
Yeah,
too.
it was one
There's
of
a
the-
whole calculation spelled out in statutes.
We'll check that that's up to date and that does have any wiggle room.
But if there are strange, like, page that
Yeah,
maybe some of wordsmith, I still am patching.
I think we'll look at all of those to just make sure it's up to date, matching the general plan, because that's stated in the goal. And if we have things that can change that aren't direct, you do this language. That. 65 continues on with density bonus, and then we get to mobile food business operations. Density bonus, we'll check that out. Bottom of 65 continued through 60.
Listen, here for. Does this state all of the things that were wanted?
We haven't talked about it yet. We haven't talked about it until.
No, but previously when.
Oh, yeah.
Construct. Does this address all of the?
No. So to me, the mobile business operations need to be a topic, and then food trucks or mobile food businesses, there can be somewhat separate because we have mobile flower vendors. There's other people that are doing pop-up like flower sales on a corner and things like that. The mobile food operations section didn't deal with what they call long-term stationary food trucks. There's terms for that. And that was really the issue as we started having, because three of our food trucks are long-term stationary. They're really not mobile. They kind of fall into a whole different category. So I had done a draft. I did a bunch of chat GPT around this, and I gave Joe right after our last meeting. I think I gave Joe a sample. So I don't know if you'd run that by Harris at all, Joe, or.
No, I haven't. I wanted to do it to, I'll provide it with this discussion too. But I do see a valid point in there, and absolutely the mobile being someone who moves from location to location versus
Could be food,
somebody
it could
that
be
sets up a permanent location.
Well, and
Right, and that is all three of them.
And I've also, Lori, on this, I've talked to a friend that works for Shasta Lake. He's a planner up there, and he sent me their
Oh, nice.
section code for food trucks. And he goes, we had to do the same thing, and we went through and just did this recently. And I think it's been over a year though. Dug that up. I'll see if I can find it again. Send it over to you.
I think you
Well,
sent
if we
it to me
can-
previously.
Cookie cutter, something that's pretty simple.
Yes.
Throw it in here rather than
At the station.
it talks about the difference between food trucks, mobile carts, from what I remember. And it was this section, but it was probably 5 or 6 pages.
Well, exactly. There
Giving
needs,
out a better description of each portion. He said that it's worked really well up there. So I'm like, if we can find the wheel rather than have to carve our own out.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
and I think if there's a jurisdiction that has one that's about that, to look at it. I just think, I finally found the term that I was wanting, because when we have a food truck or a food trailer that parks itself, the definition for a long-term stationary is it's in the same location for 3 days or more a week.
I was
You know-
going to ask what stationary means, because the ones that we currently have in town are there during the day and then they take them home, I guess, at night or someplace else. I don't consider that stationary. They just have a permanent location.
They're long-term stationary because they could go somewhere else for a food event on the weekends or whatnot, but they're not But they're not just driving around being a mobile
Block to block.
Right.
business.
That's why I
Yep.
think stationary needs to be defined.
Yes, and that's
And-
what,
While we're in this, is there the possibility that we could designate a place in the city for mobile food trucks? That's where they are, if we had more coming.
Yeah, you could do it through zone. I mean, zoning basically is the mechanism at this point. They are currently only allowed in central commercial. Discussed, and then as far as specific regulation, they're only allowed at this park. I am not sure.
Well, I'd rather go to one location and have 3 or 4 mobile food trucks than have to drive around town to find the 3 or 4 that I want.
Yep.
so the definition I found for a long-term stationary mobile food facility is a mobile food facility that operates at the same approved location more than 3 days per week or more than 30 days in a calendar year. So then that they just have different requirements. I think the other thing we want to look for in any sample code is the commissaries.
Mhm.
Right now, environmental health is allowing people to go to their home as their commissary. The commissary is where they clean their trucks. So they're cleaning their trucks at their home and their driveways, and the county is approving that. So commissaries are usually they're parking inside, they're cleaning, they're restocking. And so if their food trucks are going to a residential neighborhood and cleaning their truck in a driveway or something like that, I just think we want to
But
have a discussion
Especially if
about.
they have grease traps, and all the restaurants have to have a grease trap,
Mhm.
and they don't, and they're running that grease right down the sewer.
What was the city that you said had all the definitions?
Shasta Lake.
Yes.
But you still need to define stationary, I think, under this item.
Well, what's here, I think we need to just scrub what's here completely and start over, in my opinion.
Okay, I can agree.
Yeah, because the ones I'd seen were several pages long too, and there's just a lot of different nuances to it. And I think really separating, it's not just about food trucks, it's about mobile business. And then I think food trucks are mobile businesses, but they can also be long-term stationary. A mobile business has different requirements for how often they have to be close to a restroom. If you're stationary in one spot 5 days a week, 7 days a week for 10 hours a day, then you're looking at porta potties a lot of time. And so then where we allow these to go, what do we want them to look like? So I think there's just a lot of facets to it. I think another example of what we currently have is the food truck by the Inkwell. They own their lot. So currently they're a food truck that comes and parks there during the day and serves food. They've got approved permit for their use permit to build a building. So they're going to have a metal building on their same site, which will be their commissary. So in the morning, they'll drive their truck out of the commissary and park it 50 feet away. And then at night, they're going to drive it back and park it back inside. To me, that's really not a mobile business. That's a long-term stationary food truck that has its commissary on site, which is also known as a restaurant in 2 pieces.
Mhm.
That doesn't have to do all the same things that a restaurant has to do.
Yeah.
So I just, putting some, with our learning experience that we've had, and we had a lot of very unhappy people, with the sighting of things around them. And I think the planning commission did a good job conditioning the one that's downtown, and they've done a good job of keeping that looking nice. But what do we want,
Well,
what do we want
It does
long-term?
need detail because we have a mobile bicycle
The food carts.
cart.
Mhm.
We have ice cream trucks. What I want to see is that we don't allow these pop-up little meat carving stations on the corner street.
Yeah, we've been trying to code enforce those as much as possible. We had a long-standing battle with the Bureau of Reclamation, pop-up stand, gotten
The old customer.
Casa Ramos people gone. So those people aren't allowed. I mean, they don't have food permits. They're
Right.
not within planning. So they're already, I mean, we can stiffen language. With the food carts though, just so you guys are aware, there's a state law that's passed. Pretty much gives them free will to do the mobile roaming carts. So we are going to need to add something with that. And I don't think we'll have a lot of too much ability to control where they go if they're continually moving on. the
I don't have a
sidewalk.
problem with them
Permitted
following
business
Yeah.
license and a food
Yeah.
permit
Yep.
if they're required.
permitted. And I agree with the whole, I know there's a couple of food trucks, not in this, not all of them, but they do go someplace else and you're talking about cleaning out their trucks. They park alongside another building and clean, do the clean out drain. Now that's something to really consider. Just don't think cleaning of the food trucks. I agree that needs to be looked at. I don't know what.
Well, legally, they're supposed to be their commissary is not listed resident. So legally, it needs to be a restaurant or a building. They may choose to sign on with the person building one at Oak Street there, and use his commissary to park in. Commissary is basically a full food prep, dishwashers, sinks, and food prep area. But yeah, when they go for their environmental health permit, they're not able to list a residence, whether they follow that.
Another
Does
story.
the Attorney Health Department,
I believe they
They're
do.
supposed to. Well, I've just been frustrated with them. I mean, they've allowed, so Tacos Ocampo, who I don't have an issue with them, but they park their trailer in their driveway. I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Joe, but they got approval from the county to use their home as their commissary.
No, they got approved. So I think they were still listed as Marval as their.
That's
Yeah.
what was presented to the planning commission.
Yeah.
Marvel.
But they go directly from their place of business to their home.
I've never seen them at Marvel.
So I think the way it is Marval is the approved commissary, and then the parking at the residence.
So I just want us to think about the parking at the residence as we talk through a few things. One, do we want commissaries or these kind of vehicles parked in residential areas? Because in a way, they're advertising a sign. So when we get to signs, we're going to have things like vehicle signs. Vehicle signs are not allowed in neighborhoods, residential neighborhoods, for more than 72 hours. So just, you've got utility, commercial vehicles parking in driveways.
And I think when we looked at it, there was nothing to be, because it's a trailer, basically. So we were going by the trailer on where they park it. And I don't think we had any ability to manage that. So we can definitely check that out.
And as we're going through this, I'm just trying to think of the issues that the public has had with certain things so we can at least discuss them, and whatever we come up with, we come up with. But there was a lot of.
So we can definitely check out the
Concern.
Shasta Lake ordinance and see, sounds like just got a good thing going.
Found it. I think one thing that I want to just say out loud and make sure we focus on is right now we're really looking at mobile food business operations, talking about food trucks. And fortunately, what I'm hearing is a lot of ways for us to make it more complicated for new business to come in, instead of finding ways for us to make it less complicated for a regular restaurant, say. So I don't have an answer or a solution for it, but I think it's just something to kind of, as we're working through this, to kind of keep us on, that we try and find ways to make sure for other businesses to come in.
And I agree. And everything
clear.
Chat GPT said in regard to food trucks is it's counterintuitive to make it more difficult for them for more permitting. It's, to say that it's a negative impact on our brick and mortar restaurants. That's all counterintuitive. It says to, streamline as much as you can, make it easy for them as much as you can. And that's generic. So I think whatever we do, yes, I think our whole mindset as we do this should be business friendliness.
Yep.
Minimizing it as much as we can, while at the same time looking impacts on other.
And we have to remember that there
Venues.
are restaurants that have food truck. They use at events. So we don't want to impact their business.
Right.
And I just want
there's
to,
business on Butte Street.
my sister's actually going through this mobile truck permitting process right now for a coffee truck trailer. I don't know if there needs to be details, but she's permitted in Tehama County and in Butte County and having a hard time because they're not in alignment with one another, the environmental health. And she does have a commissary kitchen in Corning, but Glenn County is not inspecting it because they put that on Tehama County. They just take their inspection per word. And it does mention that they need an inspection report, but it doesn't mention they need a permit. but she's having to get permitted, do they have to get double permitted depending on which city they're in? They have to get their permit from Glenn County and then also get a permit from the city to operate a mobile food park?
Well, the city would just be a business license.
Okay.
Yeah, typically they get all their environmental
Mhm.
food handling stuff through the county.
Mhm.
And so our coordination with the county is that if someone comes up with a business license for a mobile food type operation, we want to see their health permit. And ideally, when they go to the county to get their health permit, they say, have you been to the city to ask, find out what their zoning is, what their requirements are, and to apply for a business license. So it's that partnership
Mhm.
that sometimes it's a little.
I'll tell you all about that. My son went there with his coffee business.
Yeah.
City
We-
Willows.
Yeah, we have been through this before. Farmers are here is actually located in Glenn County, even though they get their mail somewhere else. And they want.
No, it's Glenn County. It's just a Princeton mailing.
I know, but the supervisors, or maybe it was Scott, had to work with Butte County to tie it all together so that farmers could sell beer in both places out of a mobile truck. So it has been done, but I don't know all of the details.
Because they work venues.
Yeah, they should know at the county level how they.
But just to throw this out, in Glenn County, transporting transporting brewed coffee is a hazmat violation.
She doesn't
believe that?
transport brewed.
How many of us
coffee.
drive around with coffee in our pickups and our trucks and our
That is
tractors
such a.
every day?
And it's.
It's insane. It's
difficult
absolutely
to
insane.
understand for a lot of people.
He created his own workaround. It was perfect.
And we've really just tried to.
Anyway, I know I'm getting off topic. I just need,
Yeah.
it was insane.
I've gotten coffee from your son. I used to
Insane.
work with him. So.
Oh, yeah. Talk to him about it. He'll-
Good to know. It's, and I don't know if there needs to be nuances between like the difference of a truck
Sorry, I
that's
got off.
cooking raw meat versus her who's only like a coffee shop. They're only selling prepackaged. There's nothing that's exposed
all.
here.
Our business permit, like, has happened in the past where things were getting approved by environmental health and not seeking our permission to be there first. The Diamond gas station, the juice sellers on the corner of Humboldt and Sycamore. So we've really worked to, hey, Jay, if somebody's coming in, like, we don't want to issue them a health permit and then thinking, oh, I've got this, I'm good. Right. So he doesn't sign off on any of that until they go through our planning, building,
You got him to.
code enforcement.
Good.
It made it easy.
That's a milestone.
Oh, we got a moratorium, so we just tell them no right now. So it made it easy on them.
Oh,
Yeah, because I have not heard any transmission from that, but she's working with Andy, not Jay.
Gotcha, yeah.
Real-
So Andy's usually.
Real quick then, so she's licensed and her business is running out of Tehama County then.
And
So if she comes down here for a day,
Yep. You would need a
she has
business
to
license.
come in here, get a business license, get permitted,
She would need a business.
spend
license.
more time getting all that paperwork done to be down here for a day, even though she's already licensed.
If she lives in Corning, or that's where she.
If you do any business in the city of Willows. So if you're a contractor that lives in Nevada and you're going to come do a sewer replacement in the city of Willows, you're supposed to get a business license to operate.
Even if it's for like an event, is she hired for a wedding?
Standard cities.
Well, and there's a lot of business people. I'm pretty sure there's a lot of realtors out of Chico or Orland that are selling homes in Willows and
People don't always follow it. And it's almost
But-
impossible, but the
Crazy
code says you shall.
Final comment on
Yep.
mobile trucks. Nothing that's printed here deals with noise generators. Restroom.
So that would just be, I think,
Is that under health and safety?
yeah, I think it would go back to.
The
our-
noise issue, I know that was a problem.
It was, and that gets raised through, I think, the code enforcement, one of the other chapters of just operating a generator for any business would need to be below a certain decibels and those noise
I don't know if it
ratings.
needs to be in here, but I know it was discussed at nauseum. And
But what I
There's
think we
question.
could do, as long as our code enforcement, but yeah, is reference back, in compliance with the noise, the restrooms. The restrooms comes from an environmental health permit side of it, where they're required to have restrooms and hand washing stations for the employees on site. So that piece of it is there, but we can definitely reference back. to
Was
those
there,
codes.
was there another one, Rick, besides the noise ordinance? Or another item you had like a little list?
Garbage, wasn't there
Well,
garbage?
I said noise, I thought it was noise from generator.
Mhm.
Right.
You know, if you got a really loud generator, you're on the, got a lot of residential.
Mhm.
Noisy generator.
Absolutely.
That's how I feel
7 in the
about.
morning when I'm trying to sleep, I might be unhappy.
So maybe what we can do is look into adding something that if it's the, sorry, Lori, I forgot the terminology, is the long-term stationary that they acquire permanent power and not operate off of a generator.
Well, and then we'll want to go back to our zoning classifications because they put them in certain areas and I think conditional use permits everywhere. And that's a question we want to ask too. If we have a really good code section on them, could they be more of a simplified use in a zone if they've got all the stuff they have to comply with? So we're not conditioning them through a use permit.
Absolutely.
That would streamline things. So if we had a code that was more specific and pulled in things instead of referencing somewhere else, people, if we're trying to make this user friendly, someone goes, I'm thinking about doing a long-term stationary food truck, and they can go to the Willows Code and they go, oh, long-term stationary food truck's a section, and they can read it and they can go,
Yeah.
oh,
I think
this is everything that I have to think about to do that thing, as opposed to going,
Shasta Lake, they have a questionnaire that. they go
Yeah,
through
we would-
eventually.
yes.
Nobody goes
Good
and reads the
page.
code, unfortunately, but
Yeah.
creating an application checklist list based off our code that we have on our website and at our front counter is what, and that is based in the code, is the quick go-to kind of guide to simplify that process.
So maybe if we could get Shasta Lakes or something like that and get it sent out to everyone here to take a quick look at that.
The entire code.
Well,
Food
the
truck.
food, the food
Yeah.
truck, yeah, just the one we're talking about.
You know, I'd like to say, Lori said
Mhm.
not be,
That was the impetus.
right,
Absolutely.
exactly. So,
And if,
and there's no sense to reinvent the wheel, like say, for our agencies, like Chesley, it's a good.
I appreciated what Rick said, and I was add, and the checklist is a good place to start, but I was thinking in terms of all the different departments. It would behoove us to have a list, a printed document that says, this is what you have to do.
Yeah.
Rather than having to go through pages of stuff like this to try to figure it out. If you have the document, then you are a little more business friendly.
Absolutely. And that is the goal, is to redo our planning applications as well and simplify them, and then have sheets for specific things that are quick check guides.
Yes.
Take the step.
Once you get through them, it cuts down a lot of questions, right? And then I'm not diving into code. We've got it,
Right.
we got it done.
clear and concise.
There we go.
So Joe, offshoot.
Mhm.
Knucklehead, hard
Mhm.
permit, license, pop-ups, you've all seen and found.
Yeah.
I see when I let you already know about it,
Absolutely.
you guys get right on it, put it down. But these knuckleheads, how's the code enforcement now with really good, no nonsense code?
So I think we've got,
You know, hey, look, we've got three good businesses.
Yep.
I frequent. They're great business. They're following the law and the license. You got these other knuckleheads. The lines are long in these places
Yeah.
when they pop up.
no, so,
It's not part of Title 18, but I
Yeah.
just wanted to throw it out there.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Make sure we have
That
good
was-
teeth in it.
Mandates for, that was one of the mandates for Prentice Long to, because that's a section that they're looking at. And actually, we're still a little bit in iteration, which is why the Planning Commission and the council has not received another round yet, which next round of 4 chapters coming on Friday. But there is a short list of things, relatively short list of things that we added on and that we were explicit about, and code enforcement and making that more streamlined and more effective with more teeth when we need it was one of the things that we asked for. So we're still doing that at this time. That section.
Yep.
Good, because, you know, these illegitimate, make legitimate business look bad. They really do.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
I'm confused by, so like the planning commission said, you know, they're going to go to Marval, but then the county said they don't have to do that.
No, the environmental health said that
The environmental
commissary
health?
is Marval.
So, okay, so then I'm not picking on this business, but
Okay, go.
so, but they park at their house. How do we line up more with everybody so that we don't have those type of,
And I
it
think,
makes it difficult.
yeah, and I'm going off of memory here. I just feel that I'd have to go back and look in the environmental health side, and I don't believe that parking was required at the commissary, but I can double check that.
That's what they said.
So
They said they were going to park at Marval every night.
I want to, you want to get us back on track? I think we're going to look into the food.
I'm
truck
not trying to
section.
go off track. What I'm
No,
trying
I-
to
no, I
say
know.
is, how are we in line with these other,
And I,
whether it's the county or whatever, so that would streamline it, Evan. I'm not trying to pick on.
no, and I'm sorry. I'm not meaning you directly, Sherry.
Well,
I'm
we can-
saying that the last like 45 minutes we've been talking about trucks and that we have a lot of sections to get through. And I think that we can all agree that we need to work on our food truck section. And so I'm hoping that have Bill bring something back that
That would be my question.
will be
Perfect. Yep.
sorry, Sherry. I wasn't purposely trying to cut you
No,
off.
it's
I
fine.
was,
Adult entertainment, we made it to the adult.
Well, here we are.
We made it finally. I have a time saving recommendation that we just completely eliminate this and have a very short paragraph or so that basically all of this doesn't need to go into that much detail of all of these things, and that all of these things are banned in one paragraph, and put something in there about not having explicit sexual imagery on storefronts or visible from any public thing, because it really dives into a lot of things and it doesn't.
Right.
Unless you want all these.
I mean, it's only 3 pages. It's not super.
So just reading it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Years ago,
It is very specific.
where they, down there on the corner across from Gandy and Staley is that building, used to be a restaurant. And they were having, Tops, they were having, male strippers.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So Jake and I ended up on a committee for stuff like this.
Yeah.
But we didn't end up doing anything. So you have to be careful that you say so little that something like that can develop.
Yeah.
So
We could
that,
just say, you can't do these things and then list them, and that would be one long
I think we can
sentence.
definitely shorten it to just include more generic language, and just, I think there'll be some good definition.
I think currently the only zone that allows it is general commercial, and the setbacks are so onerous that it would be like a cannabis
yeah.
dispensary. They wouldn't be able to do it anywhere anyway. So
And-
might as well just say no.
Yeah.
There you go.
Okay. Everybody good that we'll ban it with less description.
Yeah, I was gonna say it has the same setbacks as the cannabis, 1,000 feet from the same things.
And on
I wonder where they got that from.
marijuana cultivation, we've got a very robust
I don't
chapter
mind.
9
Yeah.
on marijuana cultivation. Not saying we eliminate it, but just reference in accordance
Have it
with chapter
referenced.
9, something like that,
Yeah,
because
because this one talks about it's prohibited in all zone districts, but in Title IX, you can cultivate 6 plants or fewer indoors.
and that had to do with the changing laws of them, the state
That's
saying
the
had to
state.
do this. So it's pretty much a delete. No.
I just,
Chapter 9.
And we'll make sure the penalties, but I think we're all,
No, chapter
There
9.
should all be
is
in-
robust.
there was a very detailed study done.
but does this on the marijuana, does it need to address the home cultivation?
it's in 9.
It's
That is
type 9
too.
type
Okay.
Yeah. It's got the home cultivation, the dispensary information, everything. And actually,
location,
yeah,
land
yeah.
use.
We have a-
Well,
we have
for
a
the 6 plant
36-page ordinance.
thing, I think it was a really good idea that they did. You have to come to the city to get.
We've never issued
We've never
a
had one,
permit.
right? So we've got very like, people that would do that normally aren't going to come in to get a permit for their legal 6 plants. Yeah, so it's a very good kind of block by people not wanting to do that.
Just wait, someday we'll have a food truck.
Yeah.
There you go. That could
20.
happen.
It'll be a,
2030.
it'll be,
Did you
it'll be a
reference that?
delivery truck.
Section-
Yeah, we can, we'll look at it and make sure we're not.
Deliveries are already
eliminating
here.
anything that 9
Yeah.
doesn't
Mobile
cover, for
business or
sure.
deliveries a mobile business.
Because it.
Yeah, but deliveries are coming into town all the time already.
Yep.
Deliveries come into town all the time.
Yep.
But
Okay,
it's-
parking regulations.
Page 72.
Yep, 72, parking.
So on page 72 in the middle, it says the required parking shall not be sited in the front yard setback. And I just made a note, is any parking allowed in this area? In the front yards.
Also, mine's in the
Well-
front yard set. Now,
So for 1 and 2 families, so required parking, so I'm just saying it says that. So what does that mean? Because that's under 1 family and 2 family
In our
and
multifamily.
multifamily.
Yeah. So, yeah, and my guess would,
And just somewhere as we talk about parking, and I'd already mentioned it before, is just what is allowed in the front yards. Because you've got over on Green Street, I mean, you've got some houses, with 9 cars on this, they're in this yard, they're in the driveway, they're,
yeah.
well, somewhere where it's really shall not park
Can I ask
anywhere. but-
also, Keith, you just said mine is in my front yard setback.
The driveway.
Would it be on
That's
the,
not your required parking garage.
so is that, okay.
That
yeah,
would be considered the required off-street parking. Yeah.
But if you don't have
So
a garage,
You can park in your driveway, but that isn't considered, the driveway is not considered required parking space. It's the garage.
I think the intent of this is to make sure the garage is not sited. in the
Correct. You
front
don't
of
want
the
your
house.
garage in the front yard setback.
Okay,
think that's-
then that needs maybe spelled out a little
Mhm.
differently.
and if people have an existing non-conforming house without a garage, then they're parking legally anytime they driveway.
But it's a non-conforming
So it would fit
This
under the
was-
non.
set. So, but,
Right,
you know,
yeah.
stuff that's, yeah, obviously done
That's
before this.
another
came in.
reason not have.
Yeah, I don't like.
Don't have one.
All right, anything else on 72?
So
All right, 73.
We have elementary, 1 per, every 10 children. It's for each school. I just, that caught my eye. I don't care. I mean, we don't build schools all that often, so.
Yeah, and we just want to make sure that still, think, you know, if you've got 1,000 kids, they want 100 parking.
How many kids are,
But they have 1 space for each employee also. So
Yeah.
1 for each 10 kids and 1.
One in for the, yep.
So. And then under.
the biggest
commercial-
problem they have at any of our schools is parking.
Yep.
Or,
and the biggest
well, not the
problem,
parents pick up for any event.
the biggest problems are the parents
That's true.
at elementary.
Have the
proper,
Parent at elementary school.
parking.
You know what I mean?
300
One
square-
space,
Interesting.
isn't it though?
And it's street parking.
I.
So what are we
that's
gonna
what was
do?
being-
We're gonna have to move the museum.
The library has more
Put
than.
that in next year's
the
budget.
Library.
We can share.
In
Yeah.
next year's budget.
So under commercial uses, we added meeting facilities to like the central commercial zone. So, you know, parking requirements for meeting facilities might be something to think about. Twisted Twigs is wonderful downtown, but that's a new meeting facility. And so if they're doing something during the daytime and they've got a lot of people parking, then the businesses don't have, you're in a really bad spot, Marty. This
It's gonna be open. And we're getting some up there and.
Right. So just, you know, if someone's going to open a meeting facility, you know, just that, how often are you having events? What's your expected audience? Is there enough parking to accommodate that in whatever space you are? So meeting facilities are a new thing that we're adding to our zoning code. So I just thought maybe we'd want to add some parking. And meeting facilities require a conditional use permit for the new code recommendations. So that use permit would be looking at parking. So we should have some standard for parking.
Should parking be based off of fire safety? People are allowed inside a building.
So we currently go off a square footage of a lot of them. And we do have our downtown parking exemption zone, well, which is later, which says within heated area. Be exempt from.
We could put it under like, we could pick one of these other topics and add it to whichever one seemed to. But I just thought being able to specifically go meeting.
You know, in the parking requirements for footage, Starbucks isn't. And Karen was trying to planning. Some of the parking spaces really tight in just to meet these requirements.
It is.
And I mean, it wraps around three sides of the building. Still, it was really, some of those spots, not all of them, pretty darn narrow to get pickups in.
6 feet, 7
And,
feet.
and it's because of this. So is there a way to loosen these restrictions? Be a little bit? Just wanted to put it out there.
Could require you to get.
No, yeah, no, no electric. Anyway, just
The way we would do it is, I mean, there's usually a standard of an 8 foot long by X amount wide. We don't let it more than that. It's not in this code, but you know, we're looking at a North Valley behavioral health building. Parking is part of this that we're looking at on the meet square footage requirements. Thoughts? How to deal with that?
Really hard. You get your building a certain size and you don't have enough, you
It's
make your
true.
building
Yeah.
smaller and then it's like, oh, bigger.
Exactly. So
that's part of the business friendly. Probably be solid
yeah, and
common sense.
without, you know, but that area is also heavily impacted as it is.
Exactly. And you've got residential neighborhoods that are going to be upset if people start parking in front of their house. all the
I
time.
mean, there's also an opportunity for them to be creative about other businesses that don't need the parking. You maybe during a weekday or, you know, like having them look at sharing parking with churches who don't maybe need as much, you know, during the weekdays or, you know, other kinds of shared parking opportunities.
Well,
So
it's not,
we're trying to get them to look at some
they
of
just talk about flexibility.
Yeah, we do work with them. It's just got to make sense for us. What we're looking at available, the total cumulative square feet of all the buildings, block and factoring that in. So it is a back and forth argument, but you're always going to have these one-offs. There is option to go for variance or way to try to get that reduced by the planning commission.
See the light. Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna lay low and I think I'll be all right.
I do got
Let's
a
hear it,
quick,
Mike.
I do have a question and this is more, I don't know.
Hmm?
So where the old movie theater was, parking lot between there and the Elks Lodge, is that city owned or is that privately owned?
That's,
Private.
yeah,
So
the
the
old
church-
Tower Theater lot to the one to the east of the,
That's in complete decay and has a bunch of,
Go back.
no, are we, that's what, are we doing the
Everything else is.
Tower Theater or AMH?
AMH.
Okay, the one in the back of there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not a city lot. Neither is the one up next to.
Do we have any regulations on their upkeep of that section? Because you drive in there to park, you're gonna run over a piece of rebar sticking. They don't have tire stops anymore,
Who owns it?
but it's not signed. 'Cause- and even if it's private property, it's still not gonna, California, if somebody walks in there and trips over them not maintaining the area. But
Yeah, I mean, we can,
it looks hideous.
yeah,
I mean, it doesn't look bad.
we
I
deal.
mean, it doesn't look good.
No, for sure. And it's something we can check out. We're kind of on the opposite end of the spectrum at the Tower Theater where we're fed up with people dumping stuff on their property and having.
Yeah.
We can
There's
look
just,
at that.
you know, we want to do a lot with the downtown area, but that downtown area, that is a little U-shaped kind of around, you know, where those buildings are from
Yeah.
Tower Theater behind AMH, then around the other side, that it's just, doesn't look good. There's a way to clean it. Yes. If, sorry, can you talk into the mic? I'm sorry. Just so we can make sure it's all recorded loudly.
Yeah. My name is Julia Stores. I am the guardian of the Tower Theater. I actually talk to the owner regularly. I just talked to her on Sunday, and she's been having a lot of issues with people throwing garbage and stuff on the property, and I'm the one that usually has to call her up and be like, "Hey, you got to call maintenance," you know. And I'm also the person that paints the building if graffiti gets on it. I make sure, like this past Sunday, the wind was so bad that it blew the boards in the front down. And so I had to call GCSO and they had to put cones out. And, but we were able to get our maintenance guy out there and put it back up and stuff. So, but we're currently in the works of trying to get something going to do something with that theater again. So I'm in talks with 3 or 4 different people right now.
Oh, and the Tower Theater, I think, has actually looked better in the last 10 years than it did prior 20.
Yeah.
That's great. I'm just, there's opportunities there for new businesses. And it's
Yeah.
nice to see them kept up so it can draw those businesses in. Not necessarily Tower Theaters is not what I'm talking about. I'm more of what's behind the old AMH is not a very pretty area or a safe area.
It, so there is an exemption I'm seeing here down below. It's not much, but commercially zoned property with 50 feet or less street frontage may be reduced or waived by the city manager. So basically, I can do a very small area and there's a way to do that parking.
On the planning commission, it goes on to say all other reductions require approval. So if we're looking to be business friendly, if there's a business and they're trying to meet the code parking requirements and they just can't, bringing that forward to the planning commission for that discretionary look so that we're not saying no because you just don't have enough
Absolutely.
space.
And that will be the process. I'm thinking we're going to end up with North Valley Indian Health is trying to work, figuring out as much parking as we can and then coming to the planning commission. This is a situation we want them to do more. Comfortable with it. So that is, yes, absolutely, that is the avenue to reduce. For our city manager. Anything else on 73?
I saw Jaws at Tower Theater when it first came out. I was 16 years old. Anyway, sort of throw that out. It was last time I saw a movie there. Anyway,
I worked there in 7th grade,
did you?
cleaning up after the movies.
Seven-
Sometimes you found
yeah.
it,
Memory lane.
You're probably there the night I was there.
probably.
70,
Guys are dating yourself.
Yeah.
74.
Yep. So under 4, under site and improvement of parking areas, just people have asked parking facilities for the physically handicapped. We don't have very many handicapped parking spaces downtown any longer.
No.
Is that okay?
It is. So, and the reason that it's okay is, for our, correct me if I'm wrong, city attorney, that we make a good faith, that we've done a study to identify all the things that are ADA not compliant on sidewalks, streets, roads. We've got a ton of things that are not compliant. Ton of things in this building that are not compliant. So it's an undue financial burden to the city to have to get all of those things in compliance with a standard. What we do is make a good faith effort that when we redo a street, we do the sidewalk, we do the curb ramp, thing. So we're on a progression to ADA compliance. Obviously, if we got a big chunk of money to do it, we could. And it actually came up in conversation today about ADA parking spots in downtown and the lack of them. But it is a money thing, but we are not at risk, but we have a pathway to move to work those out over time. Anything else on 74? Get into the. Yeah, so this is the parking exemption.
Are we planning just to keep that as written?
It currently is. We can look at expanding the zone. This is one that's kind of open. You guys can see the map on 76, wording of it. So
Could be that we're getting our, because we develop central part of town and like North Valley,
Mhm.
they need more. So if we expand the exemption for off-street parking too far, then we'll just exacerbate the situation where there's not enough. So I would say keep it that way. And then if there's, if parking's an issue, I would think on any level, it could go to the planning commission for.
And just to note on the picture, because it is confusing, maybe we update this picture. The dotted area is central commercial and the parking exemption zone is actually the dark black line around it. I think we'll get that cleaned up because it's very confusing.
Well, there was no place that,
Yeah,
there
Yeah.
was no.
no
key.
reference point.
Yeah.
No legend.
So we will clean that. Is everybody good with kind of keeping that same footprint?
I don't know.
We could expand it.
I mean,
to-
I'm not quite understanding like why we don't have more of the downtown Sycamore Street included in that. When, that's where I'm talking about. There's empty lots there, but they're there because they can't have exempted parking, so they are using them for parking lots when we could be having a different type of business there. When we do have a city parking structure or area down towards the end of it at Butte and Sycamore, people can park and then walk our downtown to go visit.
I think if there's an existing building and there's no room for parking, then, they can't provide off-street. If you have a true vacant lot, I think going forward, if they can design their to, so if you look where Tacos O'Connor, for example, because I had done a site, plan, you have 0 setbacks. So your building can front right at the back of the sidewalk. You could have parking in the back, allow you to have off-street. So I think if you're starting from ground zero and you have that you could possibly provide off-street parking. But if we just said the whole, no one has to provide off-street, I think we'd want to do a calculation and say at what point problems we have, right? That there's,
Well, that's where I'm kind of thinking is we'd have a huge parking lot there.
but
Even
North
by
Valley didn't
the old
have by
Dodge Streets.
itself, starting into a lot of that. That's not that yet.
And that's why I'm not saying that healthcare facility. No, they need to provide their own parking for their 100 and some odd. I don't think that they should be taking up the public street parking for their
But they're in that
12-hour
they're in that,
jobs.
in that,
I know, I don't, that's why I'm saying this needs to be tested. Is our downtown where the gathering is. There's an empty lot right there next to it. It's used for parking. Go into the gathering. Right. I mean, that's where Holly parks. Am I right? I thought that was all one purchase, yeah.
Reno.
Who owns that, Rick?
Yeah,
But-
own it now.
But so what you're saying though is where she's at and where Puss and Twigs is at. They don't have to add parking for their location, but if somebody wanted to build a new business building right there, they would have to add their own personal or parking to that place.
if they were outside the black lines currently, yes.
That's what I mean though, they would be.
Right.
We do have a phrase on 4 at the end. If there is no parking area or access to the parking area available on the building site, off-street parking and or access as required may be provided off-site upon first securing a permit. So there is a process, and I can see, obviously see it either. We have diagonal parking all the way down Villa, maybe. But those areas kind of lend to the off-street parking being Villa, but we do have an avenue. If we left it the same, that, hey, this is my building, it's small.
I'm just thinking if you're trying to bring a store in, they want to have a decent sized footprint, then you're handicapping them because they have to also keep up 4 parking spots. That's cut their building size in half.
That's where I think that's where there's mechanism that we're talking about that can't provide it. Then there's a mechanism for, depending on the size, admin or to the commission to allow them to do. But it's just not by, I can just build my 5,000 square foot and parking be whatever. Balance out of existing business.
Someone
Burgess Street, Shasta. Pretty far. Two space. Two space.
Because I had a complaint one day and I walked into the post office. Somebody, before that, somebody complained to me, there's a car that parks all day in front of the post. So one day when I went in, I said, do you know to the clerk whose car that is out there? And I described it. He goes, yes, it's mine,
Right in front.
right in front.
Perfect.
And I said, one of the things that I learned in business is it doesn't park. Now she, that's still better. I mean, there's that empty lot, but I was surprised that postmaster hadn't kind of instruction. Please.
Commons.
Absolute. But
We used to have
it's not common.
78 when I went to work. Police firm, we had talk sticks. Daytime. Market. Car parking.
Well, when I worked over at the physical
Maybe it was
therapy
4. I think
clinic,
it was 2 though.
they marked the tires and most of the people had to be in there just a little over 2 hours. We had to tell clients, oh, your tires just got marked. You better go move your vehicle.
All right. So that was, sorry, Lori, that was kind of my point when that was, I feel like we could also be limiting space. And by saying that they have to go through extra loopholes to get that exception, to me is going to say we're making business harder because they have to go through the extra loopholes of going back through the planning commission to get that exemption, rather than us saying, hey, you know what, our downtown area is not going to have any required parking because we're going to provide it to the city on the street level. And that's just my 2 cents on it. And I don't know if there's a better way for us to handle it.
I think the way this section reads, it does say for whatever type of businesses you're opening, it's saying how much parking. So then, depending on your type, either can't, then to. So if we take away the process, then it's really everybody's whatever they want. And is that okay?
And I'll tell you, if the planners were here, they would caution you to doing that, because if you do make it more open and kind of a free for all, it's hard to reel that back when it does become a problem. There's no real way to then, because you grandfathered everybody in to do whatever they want and there's no mechanism to stop it. And so now, some years later, we have a problem with on-street parking and we can't say, okay, well, we changed our mind. You now need to have some off-street parking for your employees and for your patrons. And it's too late. It's too late then. That's why most cities have some mechanism, but they also have a mechanism for discretion and waivers.
I'll add to that real quick too, Evan, and this may hopefully eliminate some of the heartburn, but when somebody's going to come in and they're going to do a new build, because existing's already good, they're there. We're going to be going through a whole planning commission process with this to where it would become a part of the design review and a part of the CUP. So it really is more one fell swoop that we go in there and knock all these things out. And we can consider those on-street parking spaces into that square footage calculation. Well, just not guaranteed that you will build a giant building and hey, our 4 on-street parking spaces is good. So there's going to be a lot of that planning commission process involved, and that would be entwined into that piece of it. As we do a design review, we look at parking things. So just as a note on that.
I think the business friendly possibilities in the next section on signage, where some things maybe could be streamlined there.
And just really quickly on parking, and I apologize, but the garage requirements, and I'm just going to bring it up because I brought it up before. Are we hard and fast that we want to continue to require actual garages for new home construction? The reason I ask that is a lot of people don't park in their garages, even though that's the required parking. They use it for storage and whatnot. And sometimes we see a lot of illegal conversions of garages because people want the additional living space because of extended family or things going on. And so by requiring it, you know, we're creating illegal conversions a lot of times and some other issues.
We're not creating the illegal homeowners.
Well, they are. Well, they can't. So once they have a garage, they can't legally change it to anything else because it's required. Unless they can get a variance for any reason to not have a garage. Is that something that a variance could be granted for if somebody had a compelling case? If someone wanted to do a junior ADU in their home, could they convert a garage to do so?
And
You
that's,
can, but we usually discourage variances. Try not to, as
Right.
planners, do variances because that can just turn into precedent setting crazy.
Right. So we do have parking issues with people parking too many vehicles in their front yards, but some of those are because they do not have garages. So that can become an issue. But people that have garages are also parking too many vehicles in their front yard. So
I got too
the
many
purpose of a garage is for what?
Car.
For a car. So if people don't park their cars in there and they use it for other things, that's okay. We just make them have one to have one.
So
This was my issue before and it's highlighted and I didn't say anything about it. So I could lean towards not making them required, because people don't always park in them anyway. And if,
that's almost into the HOA type thing.
what?
I mean,
Requiring a garage? or-
Mandating that people park cars in garages.
Well, we're required that they have a garage. They
Sure.
can't have a carport. It has to be a garage when you build a new house. So I'm just asking if that's something that we're sure we want to continue.
I think we need.
Shall move on. It's not a parking requirement though, if it's storage. I'm just wanted to bring, if that's, I'm not
No,
going to
no,
be
I
a dead
get it.
horse. If everybody wants it, then I've said my thought.
I don't love the idea for because what if state regulations change and they can make it? Because I've stayed in a lot of ADUs there. I don't know what they are, what they will, but that'd be my own.
You can help. I have heard that banks will not own garage permit. So if
Not
somebody does
necessarily.
it illegally,
It dep-
then they want to sell their house, tear that.
It depends on the appraiser. I've seen it both ways.
Have you?
Doesn't always get noted. It depends on how well it's done, usually. Well, actually, I sold a house that had an illegal garage conversion and it wasn't an issue.
It was counted as the square foot.
Remember the details of that. It depends on what the appraiser notes. The appraisers will sometimes note this is unpermitted space. They'll give it a lesser value sometimes, but yeah, it's not a hard and fast one way or the other.
I have a room. Part of
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
are
Anyway.
are we good to leave it? Do we?
I just years ago, when I first started doing real estate, we met with city council members at the time to ask the question, why are garages required? And it was for storage. And I said, well, that's a storage requirement, not a parking requirement. So if you're requiring parking for people to park their cars in there, can someone then complain that their neighbor is not parking their cars in their garage? And is that a code
It's
enforcement
still the
issue?
United States of America. That's
I
no,
agree.
yeah,
That is,
no, I'm not arguing. Yeah,
it is nonsense, but we require it for parking.
yeah. No, I hear what you're saying.
I think it's called Buddha bio. Everybody.
I think that it's going to increase the quality of the new home builds compared to, I mean, are you going to go shopping for a house and say, I don't want a garage anymore?
Garage and- garage- I mean, everyone's.
But you have
everyone's
storage
doing-
units though. At your
Well, yeah, I have.
store stuff. Yeah. Which people use that for their garages and their man caves.
We
and
have,
their
we
other
still have a
areas.
lot to go through. And I just felt
Yeah.
like I needed to bring it up because that has been a pet peeve of mine. And so I
Good.
thought if I don't bring it up here, then I'm really
mean,
remiss.
Do we have man?
I would vote to keep.
definition?
Yeah, we should add
I
it.
hope so.
Man caves are a requirement,
Required.
right?
Okay, comprehensive sign
And
law.
those are T-shirts.
Are we good to move on to that on 77? All
Yeah,
right.
This ought to be interesting.
Okay.
Joe,
Yeah.
Joe, before I jump, are you guys jump into there? You mind if we take a quick 5-minute break? Everyone okay with that?
Yep.
Like,
Great.
stretch real quick, use the restroom.
Those
All right,
cookies
we
are
will
good.
call to a 5-minute break at 7:12.
Sorry, Evan. Cookies are good.
30. All right. Welcome back. We will resume our meeting at 7:16. Go ahead, Joe.
Thank you, Mayor. We are on comprehensive sign law, chapter 18.125, page 77. Open that up for any comment.
Only comment under purpose in the last line, it says that these general provisions serve as specific development standards to be applied in addition to the basic sign provisions with district. I went back through all the zoning districts and I didn't see any basic signing provisions. Under things, they would have parking references, but no signing references. So I thought we could either add something to every zone that says reference the sign ordinance, but there's nothing there additional to what's in this that I could.
Okay, I'll look at that. And the only thing that I could think on that is that potentially these general provisions serve as specific development standards to be applied in addition to basic sign provisions. So each zoning district is listed out later, as I'm sure you know, within this sign ordinance. So if you go to say page 84, it'll have all the specifics for R1 or
Oh, got it.
2.
Okay.
So I think it's referencing to itself within the chapter, but I'll look at the wording.
Okay,
see
so
if I
it
can
could
clear that
just
up.
be a code section reference.
I think, yeah, it's like, yeah, general and then goes through, but I'll make sure that wording.
When we talked about I don't know the correct flags that some businesses put up down.
Correct.
Taken
Like
down.
banners and.
The banners and what's the technical name?
Well, we added a definition for a flag.
Are you going to call it a flag sign?
No, there's banners, flags, and incidental signs on page 78.
Mine too.
Because
Well-
it has temporary banners, meaning a temporary sign made of fabric. Flag means a piece of fabric or similar material.
Yes.
There's an incidental sign, and then if you go to page 81, 910, or 9 describes, says flags, but nothing behind it.
Not very specific.
Well, we had given indication we were going to somehow out how allow them, but not to me. They can't be permanent. They could be there when the business is open, closes, flag signs.
You're talking about the listing.
Yeah.
Yeah, kind
It's
of
all-
blowing the wind.
Usually they do that when they open.
But there were some businesses that were 7.
And most cities, in my experience, allow it like your initial grand opening for up to like 90 days. A lot of cities say like, that can't do it every single day.
We can look at it that way.
Yeah.
Or
Called a feather flag.
feather flag. That is
Feather
correct.
flag?
It's-
Feather flag.
Did that make
Remember, I had
sense?
looked
Yeah.
at them before, and it makes it's actually a perfect name.
Yeah.
Now that you,
Why?
now that you hear it, you're like, oh, that
So
actually
there's
tracks.
the option to state that to not make them permanent. After.
So we've discussed leaving them open during business hours and ensuring that they're removed at night. We've discussed, I mean, the option, like Marty said, that where there's a time period of
When you're in
opening.
business.
I think the key discussion that I recall on the business hours piece of it was visibility, having it, but not leaving it up all night.
I
all day
haven't
long.
missed them, and I doubt if it's hurt any business. Haven't.
And
So if you have them, I'm okay.
that's how the code is currently.
Well, and just to
Right.
point out, I think enforcing that, you're going to always
Difficult.
have somebody who's not going to take it down, and with a, 1 or 2 day a week code enforcement officer and having staff run after people because they didn't take it down, or some people, just don't want to bother with that. I don't know. I mean, it's so hard for us to keep up with code enforcement as it is, for things that are really important. I just think it's going to be another one of those things that we're going to be chasing after if we say, okay, you can have it during the day, but when you're open, but then you got to take it down. Who monitors that? Who tracks that? Right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, and
I
if
mean,
everybody
that-
has one, it doesn't really draw anybody to your business. You know what I mean? If you're looking,
There's so many of them.
yeah.
there's a commercial business person that I would love to bring to Willows who, if she does a whole workshop on how to make your business look open without neon signs. And she would have a field day about her opinion on flags and banners and street like all of those things are things that she can show you, actually things she's done in other communities that really draw people to the business by, putting out their wares on the street and making that the attraction instead of a loud neon sign or a banner or,
Feather.
yeah, exactly. Or one of those. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I totally agree with you.
Yeah. They look cheap. They wear out really fast.
Yeah, then they get torn, they don't take them down.
Yeah, I'm okay that we don't have them. I think they get tacky. Take.
But we do need a definition.
Yeah, we do need a definition.
And so you'll see on the strike through later in here that they actually eliminated, deleted prohibited signs flags. So we'll add that back in is what I'm hearing, because we're examining options of having them for certain things, but that we just outlaw those.
I mean, there are bigger things to worry about. Probably
Yep. And
either that or allow a 30 days.
I will say, you can drive through our neighbors to the north and go see how many tattered flags are all
Well, they
over
get-
the place,
They get,
and it's not attractive.
It's not.
So
It
So
is.
under the definition for banner, it's talking about that's a temporary sign, but we have our banners that we do, our city banners. Long.
140th year anniversary.
So just curious on that definition, is a banner always a temporary sign? And then we put ours on and does that how we attach ours on a pole or between supports? But, they're saying they're typically attached to a building or suspended. So just,
yeah,
banner isn't always temporary.
I get, yeah, absolutely.
And then down under flag, I had added, it says flag is a piece of fabric, typically rectangular, whatever, with colors, patterns, or emblems. Well, feather flags have text. So can a flag have text on it, like
I think,
Fritos or open?
well, yeah, absolutely. My thought is that we come up with we leave the flag definition in there and maybe tighten it up, and then we have feather flag.
Because
Right.
you have
Another-
another standing sign. That could be
I think
feather.
Mhm.
we just add feather flag in.
Yep.
That's a common
Description.
term.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we're gonna keep them prohibited.
Well, it's.
One thing that
it's-
one thing that I was reading is number 14, and maybe I'm skipping ahead on page 80. Am I jumping ahead way too much? So here's your sign. No person shall exhibit, post, or display on any sign or wall any statement, symbol, or picture of an obscene nature. What? There's no definition for obscene. So I'm sorry, I'm thinking insurance world where every word has a definition.
Yep.
If
And-
not,
and that
then
is-
it's
I
up
mean,
for interpretation too. So I don't know if we want to look
Put
into
a question mark by it, the definition.
is obscene.
And maybe
somebody
we go
smoking a
back and go,
cigar, that somebody
as defined in the adult entertainment.
But we're gonna.
Yeah,
wipe most
yeah.
of
That we
out.
wiped out.
But we're gonna have a statement still that bans it, right? And I think that we
But-
define that
Yeah.
and reference back to it because obscene to like you said, subjectivity is never great.
Mhm.
And is that kind of like graffiti without saying graffiti? I don't know. I mean, I can't remember seeing graffiti specifically as a thing in here.
Do we have murals?
There's nothing on murals. Orland has a whole.
I would like
code
murals
section on
on
murals. So I had thought about bringing it up for this, but I kind of thought maybe do some new work, talking to the Arts Commission about just bringing concept to add.
Oh, mural should. I mean,
I
Rick
mean,
had,
Orland
Rick
has
had
a
a
whole
beautiful.
section on.
said it.
You guys want to look at language for adding a mural into it? I mean, we can definitely examine that to have some. No, yeah, we can do it at any point.
Yeah, but Orland has a mural program. Mural program.
Really cool.
Shouldn't be allowed. Well, just like obscene,
Oh yeah, yeah, we.
find him.
I think we can definitely link it, because we,
So
like
she was just
I said,
told.
obscene to one person is.
He gets paid for it.
Down toward the bottom of page 78, it talks about poles.
Yes.
And when we were talking about the feather signs, I wondered if they were identified as a pole sign.
So
Somewhere, no, but somebody could come along and say, well, I'm not going to put a feather sign up. I'm going to put a pole sign up.
What page was that on the bottom of? I'm sorry.
78.
definition of pole sign.
Oh, pole
So I
sign.
think what we need to add to that is because a pole sign is yes, it's a freestanding sign. Normally we think of it as our big freeway signs, or our identification signs for Burger King,
identification.
things of that.
You could literally add in.
Yeah,
other
we
signs,
we can do that.
but
Full sign, not a feather.
Oh.
Yes,
Yes.
yes,
Yeah, that's.
Yeah, it's not a feather sign.
See
Yes.
feather flag.
yeah. But no, absolutely. Let's clean it up to make it very clear.
but that's how far into the weeds you want to get. You want to say, well, a sign is a hard a hard material, not fabric. Whatever.
Yeah.
Just depends on how far into the weeds you want to get into
Well, and I
that.
think that's a good idea for pole sign itself is that it's not fabric, whereas a feather flag is fabric.
Mhm.
The pole sign is not going to be fabric. So that's maybe a good way to tackle that whole piece of it.
Have
Thank
we
for
got
that.
to the sandwich board signs?
That's
It's
the
coming up.
A-frame.
Okay.
Coming up.
I mean, we don't want to allow those dancing things either.
I think those are already
They're-
prohibited.
Great call.
Yeah.
I do not know. Airmen.
Idiots.
Blow up.
They're very popular in.
Well, they could be allowed for a certain period of time for a grand opening.
Special event, but that would be again, that'd be some sort of permit that they'd have to get. Say, hey, you're allowed to have this sign out there for the next.
But
And
then you
then-
go back to
and then
the
you have to-
enforcement.
Well, so page 79, under temporary signs, means a sign which is installed for a limited time, the period of which is determined by the city and issuing an administrative temporary permit.
It's out of city. And a year later, we
Are doing. fine.
I think 90 days is a long time.
Yeah, I mean, well, we haven't had one, I don't think.
They ask for them, but we
Yeah.
don't make them.
Yeah.
We don't enforce it, but if they.
Well, if we got a call that there was a temporary sign placed, I haven't had to, what I've had to deal with is the feather flags that we ask people to take down downtown.
You haven't had it say.
No, I don't think we've had any temporary sign permits.
Probably just do that, and if nobody, then it'd be,
Then we would, yeah,
I mean.
A lot of.
It talks about real estate signs a lot in here, how they have to only be one on site and only for 30 days, and you can't have directional signs anywhere and none of that stuff. Or do we care about real estate signs? I mean, if I have a house listed for sale, I can have one real estate sign, but I can only have it for 30 days. I know, but it says I can only have it
Oh,
for
that
30 days.
doesn't make any sense.
We want to keep it in there for you, Dad, real fast.
No, it doesn't make any sense.
Then you can't have directional signs and people do them all the time. You know, they'll have a sign on the street with their arrows pointing down and so it says in here several times, but really that we don't see any of that.
What page was that, Lori? Sorry.
Well, let's see, now I gotta find it.
Yeah, I read it.
Like I said, it's throughout